Welcome back. The Internal Revenue Service will get what it calls a, quote, historic opportunity to modernize its operations through the Inflation Reduction Act. The agency's IRA strategic plan details what and who it will spend the money on. Danny Werfel is the commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service. Danny, welcome. Let's start with 80,000. That number's been thrown around a lot since this money was approved. That's the number of people that people think will be coming into your agency. What's happening people-wise over the next 10 years as a result of the IRA?
Well, first thing is that, the first rumor that was out there was that these new employees would be armed, and let me just put an end to that rumor. That is absolutely not the case. What we need to do is we need to hire a variety of different people to help meet the demand of the tax system we have today. So that means two important things. One, we have people that are calling into the IRS for help in navigating our complex tax laws. We need enough customer service agents to man the phones, and right now we're getting there. We've hired about 5,000 new agents, and as a result, we had a historically good tax season in terms of answering the phones, but we have to maintain that number and make sure that as the tax system and the filers grow, we have the right amount of people in the phones and in our walk-in centers. We have taxpayer assistance centers around the country. Some people don't want to call in, some people want to walk in, and we need to be ready to meet them there as well. So that's the first type of person that we're hiring. The second type of person we're hiring is to help make sure there's fair compliance with the tax system. And let me just give you a little bit of data. Right now, we have 2,600 IRS employees that are responsible for exam or audit of the top most wealthiest taxpayers. That's individuals, large corporations, complex partnerships. 2,600 IRS employees. There's roughly 390,000 wealthy and very wealthy taxpayers, against individuals and organizations. So 2,600 employees, 390,000 very wealthy filers. So we have to close that gap a bit, because these wealthy filers are coming in with returns that are thousands, tens of thousands of pages, sometimes hundreds of thousands of pages. And so really what we're doing is we're hiring data scientists, accountants, some auditors, attorneys to unpack those very complex returns. And that's what the hiring is about.
One of the challenges that you'll have too over the 10 years that this money covers is that people will leave service. They'll retire or they'll move on to other jobs. What's the attrition look like prospectively to fill those jobs?
Very challenging, and that's demographic. Right? We've heard for a long time about the wave of baby boomers that are going to retire, and we're living that right now. We have a significant number of IRS employees that are eligible for retirement right now. So not only do we have to grow our capacity in, for example, our call center and our ability to assess what is owed by our wealthiest taxpayers, we have to keep up with that very attrition. So we have a lot of hiring to do, and I like to say this is not about supersizing the IRS, it's about right-sizing it. We just have to have an IRS that's the right size to deal with the size of the tax system we have today. As I mentioned, population growth, complexity of tax filings, the GDP moves up and the economy becomes more complicated, and we get new requirements. So for example, if you look at what happened during the pandemic, the IRS was provided a lot of new responsibilities, for example, getting economic impact payments out. We need to be ready for new challenges that might come our way where we're going to have additional requirements, and it's a readiness.
You and I talked about the situation technologically at the IRS when you were acting commissioner 8-9 years ago. What's changed in the interim, and what is really necessary for you to move the agency technologically to sync with those people that you're bringing in?
Yeah, well, in my early weeks at the IRS, I really tried to get a sense now in 2023 where we are. And we've had some important successes. We have, modern platforms. We have updated digital scanning of paper forms. And when I say modern platforms, I mean platforms that previously didn't allow people to file electronically in a way they couldn't before, upload documents that are digital versus submitting paper. But there is a lot to do. That for every form that you can file electronically today, there are forms you can't. And we have to be in a world where taxpayers, if they choose to want to have a completely digital experience with us, they should be able to make that choice. And we can't accommodate that yet. The other part of our technology is what I call our backbone, like the big business systems that are there that do things like, for example, house all the taxpayer information. We have two large systems, the individual master file and the business master file. Those systems have to be secure. And so if they're on older technology, then we're not investing in all the right solutions to make sure that we mitigate all risks of data intrusion. These are the types of investments we need to make. And what I'm seeing is some improvements have been made over the past 10 years in these systems, not enough. And the Inflation Reduction Act funds will let us get across the finish line and give taxpayers confidence that when they submit information to the IRS, it's on the most modern technology available to protect that information.
I mentioned the strategic plan for the IRA that you released just a couple of weeks ago, and we don't have time to go through all 5 objectives. There's a link to it at fedgovtoday.com. But one in particular I wanted to ask you about: dramatically improving service to help taxpayers meet their obligations, receive the tax incentives for which they're eligible. That fits, it strikes me, with the President's management agenda focus on customer experience. Is that what that objective is intended to sync with?
Absolutely. It's this idea of meeting taxpayers where they are. Like I said, I think when the IRS is at its highest and best purpose and mission and functionality, then we are recognizing that taxpayers are different. They're approaching us from different means, from different locations, with different preferences. And so we have to make sure that we can meet those preferences fully digital, in person, on the phone. Also, it's not just build it and they will come. A lot of taxpayers don't realize, because of the complexity of our system, that they may be eligible for a refund, that they may be eligible for a credit. So this is about education and outreach. We have an opportunity to reach underserved populations, rural populations, in a way that we couldn't before when we were underfunded. So this funding really is about benefiting taxpayers, because the emphasis is on 2 things: service and making sure that the wealthiest taxpayers pay what they owe. Those 2 things, I think, have pretty much widespread agreement, as those are 2 things that the IRS should focus on, and that's what the Inflation Reduction Act does.
That customer experience element that you just described would go a long way toward addressing, I think, what I see in surveys all the time about the way people think about your agency. Another one is objective 2, quickly resolving taxpayer issues when they arise. What's the strategy to be able to address that? How much of that is technology and how much of it is people, Danny?
Well, first, let me say, we're not in this game to be popular. We have a mission to help taxpayers, and popularity is not part of it. I've been talking to the IRS employees and saying, look, we're like that football referee. We'll get booed when we get the call right. We'll get booed when we get the call wrong, but we can't leave the field. We're essential to the game, and we really relish that mission. And we know no one's going to throw a parade for us when we get it right, and that's okay. We're proud of what we do. Now, how do we help taxpayers fix problems right away? One of the biggest things we can do, and this is about not being as modern as we could be, is putting online accounts in place. You should have the same experience when you go to your local bank. You should have the ability to see your information, have that online account, get that email alert, see that red flag that there's something that you can fix right there in real time. If we do this right, then the era of getting weeks and weeks of letters from the IRS could be over, because you're resolving it in real time on the computer, in your profile and in your account. We're doing that for individuals, we're doing that for small businesses, we're doing that for large businesses, and we're excited about that advancement.
About 30 seconds left, Danny. I know you can't maybe give a timeline, but what vision, from a vision perspective, how far off do you think that idea is?
Not that far off. I mean, that's the thing. We have great momentum. We had a great filing season. We have digitized more forms, and we'll digitize more. We'll be able to knock down paper backlogs as a result. I expect things, for example, like we're going to increase the callback option in our call center to 95% of the time you'll have a callback option. We expect to do that by the end of July. We expect meaningful improvements and modernizations by next tax filing season, but we have to keep the Inflation Reduction Reduction Act funds in place in order to do it. And we also have to fund our base budget in order to make sure that the current train schedules are operating on time. And I'm testifying before the House this week on the budget. I look forward to explaining exactly where those moving pieces are.
Danny Werfel, thank you very much for joining me today. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Francis.
You can find a link to the IRS's strategic plan at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today with Francis Rose. Be back in a moment.